If you lose your job, everyone's going to recommend that you apply to jobs using the platforms that they're aware of, which are currently saturated. Fewer people are going to recommend that you start a YouTube channel when you lose your job because you can start a YouTube channel whenever, and it's beneficial regardless of if you're looking for a job or not. I've been a software developer for 14 years, and I began taking software engineering more seriously about 10 years ago. I have been able to write software that posts job descriptions which people do apply to. Because of this role, if software engineering can be automated, millions of other jobs will be affected. Something that's worth noting is that I personally don't believe software engineering can be automated because I believe culturally it's a relationship with logic and social dynamics. There is an amount of logic that we're willing to describe and discuss and share, and there's an amount of logic that we understand is necessary and don't want to share, either because it's too boring or because it describes a part of business operations that would be hard to describe to clients while maintaining clients. So I would recommend that you start a YouTube channel and begin making a website that you can get online. If you want to build web applications or games, then I would recommend considering progressive web applications. Different people are going to learn at different rates, and there's a lot to software. If you can describe which elements of software you're learning and how they benefit the development of your philosophy, then you're prepared for how the field is changing. You might evaluate your skills to be good. Unless you're self-employed, your self-evaluation isn't as relevant as your ability to get hired. Cheers. I have this box of squares from when I drew with people in Chicago. I would recommend doing something like this, although I would mostly recommend doing something like this a couple years ago. The reason is that you can describe your relationship to technology and the things that you believe are going to be relevant in the future. Before, it kind of seemed like software engineers were paid to write code, but we're actually paid to be correct about how systems scale. So if you can describe a coherent understanding of how things are going to change, then that's something that you can use to describe your perspective as an engineer. I say that I'd recommend doing this a couple years ago because I'm doing this. This is the thing that I do. I turn seeds into projects, and I describe to teams how they can autonomously organize to complete those projects. There's more info in my Discord. Send me a message if you want to join, or ask me about it on a TikTok live. Cheers. I don't make content because I enjoy making content. I make content because I've already described all of my skills and qualifications in videos, which can now be turned into text and made entertaining in songs. I've been coding since I was in high school, since around the time I was 14. I've been fired for not writing enough code while I had an idea that my job was to solve problems. And now it's easy to generate a lot of code, and companies are looking for talented developers. The talented developers that are working for companies are burning out, and the talented developers that haven't been hired can't stand out. This is a systemic problem. I do find it strange that we hire systems engineers into software engineering positions and give them the means to change the world and wonder why they aren't motivated to. Then I build tools, I make videos, I go live, and there isn't support. I wonder why the richest people in the world would support people who haven't demonstrated any interest in stabilizing systems beyond themselves. I like the idea of billionaire philanthropists, but the billionaire philanthropists would need to copy behavior of philanthropy. Unless we genuinely do want a king, then I guess the richest person is the person who we listen to. Check out my profile and watch a couple of my videos. Cheers. Something that's still challenging for AI models to do is maintain scene coherence with a reasonable connection to a human world. So I would recommend having an art station that you can increment over some time and be able to describe the amount of time that's gone into the things that you've made. We don't really know if a new AI model is going to come out and be more intelligent than all of the others. We do know that hardware is getting cheaper and the models are getting more efficient. They are becoming more efficient. Being able to relate the knowledge to the ways the knowledge feels is still something that humans are going to need to be able to do. A lot of people who realize how precarious their job situations are going to be motivated to do things to stabilize themselves. If you've been doing anything consistently for years, you can describe the things you've been doing consistently for years as the things you can do consistently. So I would recommend maintaining some consistency in a practice, art style, describe the values that you have and how they relate to the spaces you occupy. Make a YouTube channel, go live on TikTok, talk about the things you've experienced, meet other people who have similar experiences, meet people who have different experiences. Post relatively regularly on X and or Blue Sky. The important thing is grounding relationship to a human amount of time. Also, a human amount of willingness to navigate complexity. Cheers. The things you can imagine doing with a website are probably pretty similar to what you can currently accomplish with social media. A challenge is that all profiles on social media start off with the same amount of recognition. It's hard to know where quality is going to be or which things we're going to want to return to consistently. So if you have a website, something that you're saying is, this is where my content can be centralized, or this is where the start of my brand can be found. You're also able to do this on social media. Most of my clients I find through TikTok. My website currently isn't set up for me to be able to receive clients through my website. You can send me an email. My email is connected to my domain. I'm a web developer and I have bills. I've also already written a lot of code. I might have already written code for the thing you're trying to do. I've made content about this, and we're probably going to need to have a conversation on a TikTok live. Financial support makes it more likely that I can go live on TikTok. You might be aware of diffused responsibility. Cheers. One of the reasons I paint is that it helps me keep track of time, which is more difficult for me than it seems to be for other people. I noticed this in jobs and asked for accommodations, but asking for accommodations raises flags and makes people wonder if you can do what you've been hired to do. Talking with people about my experiences, I noticed that the amount of anxiety I feel about saying something and being misinterpreted or onboarding somewhere and being fired is something that impacts my day-to-day. And I wonder if I've just been internalizing something that's beyond my control about the ways people perceive urgency. When I describe that my paintings describe emotions, then oftentimes it's received as if there's a decipherable emotion that someone should feel when they look at something that I've made. Sometimes the emotion is just, I feel like there's an amount of time in this painting, and when it's difficult for me to feel like things are happening towards positivity, I can look at the word boon and reflect on what that means. So the emotion isn't really something like happiness or sadness. It's peace with the ability to recognize that I can spend time and have that rewarded with my own ability to recognize that I've spent the time. I would recommend software engineers practice painting, at least so they can have a relationship to grounded abstraction. You can do some pretty cool things with the recent AI models, like Grok can imagine this and animate it. ChatGPT can interpret it and create new art. Midjourney has some pretty compelling fantasy visuals. Sometimes I ask ChatGPT to generate lyrics based on the art that I've made, and then I use Suno to generate a song. When I mention AI, people hear AI and ignore all of the work that's gone into all of the stuff that I've done. On a monthly basis, the work that I do amounts to about $2 per hour. I can say it would help to be able to navigate the world, and I can ask for it, and I do. I also share time and describe the time that I share. Painting is optional, and I recommend it. Cheers. The people who understand how important our education system is are volunteering to support it. The US government is defunding a lot of education programs, services, and programs. If we have generations of people who grow up without education, there are compounding problems that propagate through their offspring. Additionally, desperate people make desperate decisions. The government isn't funding the people who volunteer to maintain our education system, so you need to do that. If you'd like a government that funds education, you would need to participate in government to change that for whenever we have the kinds of change that more people are looking for. In the meantime, the people who make educational content and videos that others can copy and learn from need support. This is a call to action. Cheers. I don't know who needs to hear this, but having fewer presidents wouldn't give us more education. Also, you can get involved in local politics. Also, you can get involved with your local school board. Also, you can spend time with people online. Also, you can form groups and meet up locally. If we didn't have a president, we would not have more order. Let's focus on what we're building. A couple of years ago, I designed this interface for factshift.com. The idea was that you'd be able to describe an idea and label that, and then reference how that concept exists so you can share it with other people and compare the similarities and differences. I've made art about this and multiple social media profiles so you can see how the concept plays out. It's correlated with a language that I designed called Swoop. The idea is that it would represent various forms of semantic intent. Support my work, please. Software engineers are paid to solve problems and might be fired for not writing enough code. It's pretty easy for someone who isn't a software engineer to say, just write more code and you won't get fired, but if you write wrong code, then you get fired too. Companies that are aware you've been fired can make the easy decision to reject your resume, not because you aren't a good candidate, just because the market is so competitive. If you do get fired as a software engineer, you should meet other software engineers. Post about your strategy for income and try to develop in parallel. You might reach a point where there isn't more code that you can imagine writing. Then you can focus on sales and marketing. Business plans that require third-party connections to AI systems aren't viable. The third-party AI solutions can raise their prices or change their feature set at any time. The parts of a business that can be stabilized aren't going to rely on third-party AI solutions. AI might make some things faster or more entertaining. So can hiring extremely talented people, and people have experiences that are more unique than AI. Rethink your business plan if you can't accomplish it with more time or more expertise. There are more things that I could say about resources and capital. This video is for a pretty niche audience of probably programmers, maybe founders. Cheers.